Welcome everyone to Fundamentals of Kabbalah and Chassidut. We are continuing our new series called The Wandering Jew, Mystical Musings and Inspirational Insights from Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburgh. This is the book that we are using. It's in English. It's in Hebrew also. It's been translated into Hebrew. And we are on the section called God and Man. For people who are just coming on, who have not been to the series yet, I just want to mention that what this book is from 2010, 2011, when Rabbi Ginsburgh was using Twitter and a blog. And then many years, like 10 years later, his students just took his different tweets and blogs and arranged it according to subject material. And as I mentioned, and it's very, very important because I think everyone knows or should know that Rabbi Ginsburgh is probably the greatest teacher of Kabbalah and Chassidut in our generation. At least one of them, I consider him the greatest. But here we see that he is talking to like the lowest common denominator. He, as you will see, he's saying very, very deep things, but in very simple language, and he's not using that much of what we call Kabbalistic jargon. And what we've been trying to do is I read it, and then we discuss it. And of course, we have our discussion group afterwards. But my main intention here is to show like what's behind these seemingly simple mystical musings. So we're in a section called Divine Providence and Choice. So that's what we're going to begin with. We did really last time, and then the next subject we're going to be going to is good and evil. Okay, so let's start. So he says like this: the Tzaddik, a righteous individual, falls 7 times and rises. This is from a verse. Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. A tzaddik will fall 7 times and get up. So our first question is, well, if he's such a righteous person, why is he falling? And the answer is because a tzaddik, a righteous person, is as human as everyone else, and has ups and downs and many, many challenges, many, many obstacles. And the whole thing of a tzaddik, though, is he falls, but then he gets up. And of course, we all have a point of a tzaddik within us. And so we also have the power, no matter how many times we fall, to get up. So he continues, every fall is for the sake of another ascent that will follow. After each fall, you get a raise. I mentioned also that many of these insights have a lot of sense of humor. So after each fall, you get a raise. And so what does it mean that after every fall is for the sake of another ascent? So this is also based on a very important Kabbalistic teaching that Yerida L'tzorach Aliyah. You go down in order to go up. So this is like an attitude about life, is that we understand that we have the possibility of turning every fall into a rise. After every fall in life, rise to a new personality, create a new face. You must rise to the occasion of having fallen. To fall is to fail. To rise is to succeed. To fall is false. To succeed is true. Ours is a world of falsehood. The future order is truth. So he's saying so much here in such simple language. You'll pardon me, I'm just letting everyone in. Okay. So when he says that to fail is false, this depends on our attitude. If we look at falling as failure, then that's what it will be. But he's trying to give an over idea that if during the fall we realize that it has the possibility of helping us rise further, then it's not a failure. It will be a success because it will lead to a raise in consciousness. He continues. You'll pardon me, just a lot of people are coming on. So I'm admitting everyone. If you fall, though, you must take full responsibility for your actions and their consequences. Nonetheless, you should always remember that all is by divine providence. Providence has your future in mind. Every detail of our lives, whether good or bad, will ultimately bring us to a better place than before. In our continual ascent to God, between levels, there must be a fall to nothing. The apparent descent of the fall is only virtual, not real. In God's intention for creation, there is no evil whatsoever. So again, this is saying a lot here. And here he brings up the great paradox of divine providence and free will. It's between the lines here. That's what he says, that everything in life, especially when we fall, we have to take responsibility. Why are we falling? What is the message? What is the message? And yet at the same time, we have to understand that God is directing everything at the same simultaneous time that we have free will. So of course, this is a great paradox of free will and divine providence. Continuing, God's intention is always there behind the scenes. However, free will was given to mankind, who plays on the stage. Sounds like Shakespeare, that we're all players on the stage of life. Our choices determine how quickly we ascend to God, and more importantly, the mode of our ascent, whether it be peaceful or warlike. Ascent that is warlike means struggling with issues before they can be resolved. In peaceful ascent, there is no struggle. The way ahead is clear. Would it be that all of our challenges could be a peaceful ascent? But we know that we're human, and a lot of times it feels very challenging, and we need to work. We need to work spiritually on balancing the falling and the rising, the obstacles, and let's say how we turn lemons into lemonade. Continuing, the Tzaddik falls 7 times. That's how we started this piece here. In Hebrew, again, Sheva Yipol Tzaddik. So now he gives us a beautiful gematria, an unexpected gematria. He says the numerical value of Sheva Yipol Tzaddik, 7 times the Tzaddik falls, equals Shabbat. And that's a bit surprising. What's the connection between falling and Shabbat? So he explains, every day of the week one falls, only to rise, consciously with the fall experience on Shabbat. On Shabbat, we fall straight into God, who catches us and lifts us up. In other words, I'm sure everyone's had the experience of having a rough week, a difficult week, and then Shabbos comes and it feels like everything is resolved. We have a break. We can get a different perspective. We have moments of peace and serenity. So he imagines that it's like falling into God. So it's a type of fall, but it's a kind of fall that lifts up the whole rest of the week. And I learned from Rav Ginsburgh an amazing thing about Shabbat that's connected to this. And that is in science, there's just a reality that all energy attempts to fall to the lowest maintenance level. The way we can imagine it is like a bonfire. We feed this fire with logs, and it flames up, but eventually it will fall. But apparently this is a law of nature, and it's connected in a certain way to what's called entropy, that everything falls to its lowest maintenance level. So he said that is the secret of Shabbat. That after 6 days of activity, the secret of Shabbat is human beings are not really made to go 24/7. Modern society goes 24/7. But from a psychological point of view, an emotional, intellectual, spiritual, we need to fall to a lower maintenance energy, and that is Shabbat. So that's very connected to what he's saying here, that Sheva Yipol Tzaddik equals Shabbat. The Tzaddik falls 7 times, that equals Shabbat. But Shabbat, the fall is into God, and that fall lifts up the whole rest of the week. Okay, so he continues. We're almost done with this piece. He says, the Baal Shem Tov said he could ascend to heaven in a pillar of fire, like Elijah the prophet, but preferred to fulfill the verse, you shall return to dust. It says in the Torah, you come from dust and you will return to dust. So the Baal Shem Tov is saying spiritually, he could be like Elijah the prophet and ascend to heaven in a fiery chariot. But he prefers, as it were, the fall back into dust. By wanting to be like dust, he merited to indeed ascend in fire, teaching us that the lower you fall, the higher you can rise. So hopefully we can all remember this, because when we're falling, it's so easy to feel like this is the end, or this is a permanent situation. I can't get out of this. But what he's saying is, I remember in the, I guess in the 50s, there was a famous movie, I can't even remember the name of it, But the theme was the harder well, let me get this right. Something like the higher they come, the harder they fall. Here, this is the opposite. The harder you fall, the rise will be that much greater. So then he says, death, the greatest fall, gives rise to the greatest ascent. From our perspective, when our close people pass away, so of course we feel sad, we miss them, we mourn, but from a different perspective, they are going in a way to a much higher place. True consolation after death lies in knowing this and understanding that mourning over the deceased assists them in their ascent. So this is a very, very important idea that all of the mourning customs that we have and laws, many of them are to assist us in integrating the loss that we're going through. But there's another side of it, is that a very strong belief that our mourning and our learning in the name of someone who's passed away, of giving charity in the name of someone who's passed away, doing good deeds, actually helps their soul rise. So it's like a mutual kind of comfort that happens during mourning. Now, the last paragraph, and this is important because next Monday night and Tuesday is Lag BaOmer, where we celebrate Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Akiva. So he says, while others cried when witnessing the destruction of the temple, Rabbi Akiva laughed. What's the story? Famous story in the Gemara that Rabbi Akiva and his companions were crossing above the Temple Mount, and were looking down in the Temple Mount after the temple had been destroyed. And all the other rabbis just began crying. And Rabbi Akiva began to laugh. So Rav Ginsburgh explains, he understood that the fall was over, and so the reason behind it would now be revealed. Mashiach was born at the moment the temple was destroyed by fire. God will build a better one that descends from heaven in fire. So Rabbi Akiva explained to them, and they said, why are you laughing? He said, why are you crying? And they said, well, obviously, look. And he said, but that's why I'm laughing. And he explained to them that now that these prophecies have been fulfilled, because God told the people, if you don't change your ways, through the prophets in the name of God said, if you don't change your ways, the temple is going to be destroyed. And that's exactly what happened. But then there are other prophecies of the redemption and the ingathering and Mashiach. So Rabbi Akiva explained to them, now that we've seen this prophecy fulfilled, now I'm sure the good prophecies will be fulfilled. And the rabbi said to him, you have comforted us, Rabbi Akiva. You have comforted us. So that's a very, very famous story in the Gemara. So that's the end of this piece. As we said before, I had to stop like every few lines because he's trying to explain it to people who might not know any Kabbalistic jargon, any Hasidic thought. And yet, people who know this can see through what he's saying and get the depths. Okay, so the last one in this section called Divine Providence and Free Choice. This one, the one we just did, was obviously from a blog. If you remember Twitter in the beginning, you had very few words. So the next one is a tweet. So he says like this: only God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. We as creations are forever limited. Our souls, however, reflect an infinitesimal bit of God. We possess the ability and freedom to learn what we want, to do what we want, and to be where we want. Nothing stands in the way of will. So what is he trying to get at here? First, he's establishing that God is infinite, eternal. And human beings are finite, are limited. Every living thing eventually dies. But then he says, though, the soul has a piece of God, and therefore is connected to eternity and infinity. And that's what gives us the power, as he said, it gives us the ability and freedom to learn what we want, to do what we want, and to be where we want. Nothing stands in the way of will. So in other words, when we apply our will in a certain way, we're drawing God's energy into a very limited, finite, material world. And yet, free will has incredible power in order that we can manifest what we want in this world as much as we can. Okay, now we're going to the next section about good and evil. And that's probably what we will spend the rest of tonight on. So the first tweet in this section of good and evil is: take nothing for granted. Every moment of our lives is a battle to choose good. But the battle doesn't have to be bitter. It can be sweet. Beautiful. In just a few words, he's expressing such an important thing, that we all have a good inclination and an evil inclination. And the battle is 24/7. It's a constant challenge to choose the good, not to be drawn after negativity, after evil. But what he says is, this struggle is going to be either bitter or sweet, depending on us. We don't have any choice about this battle. It's our existential reality. The Tanya talks about a complete tzaddik who has gone beyond this kind of battle and is not challenged in the same way as everyone else. And everyone else is 99.99% of human beings. That's why the book of the Tanya is called Sefer HaBeinoni, the intermediate person, meaning intermediate between good and evil. And so here it's a battle, but whether the battle is bitter or sweet depends on us. In other words, we can take that existential reality and turn it into of taking adversity and turning it into opportunity. Or as the modern saying goes, taking lemons and turn them into lemonade. Okay, that was just a tweet. Now we have the first of a number of blogs. And here he is, this is a very, very subtle point in Kabbalah and Chassidut. He says there are three souls. Now, usually we think of two souls, the animal soul and the divine soul. But here he says that in certain schools of Chassidut, they recognize three different levels of soul: the animal soul, the divine soul, and between them, what's called the intellectual soul. The animal soul asks, why be good? What do I gain by it? So this is when the animal soul is talking to us, and like the snake in the Garden of Eden, you don't have to listen to God. What do you get out of it? I can show you a better way. That's, what do I gain by it? That's the animal soul talking. The intellectual soul answers, if you are good to others, they will be good to you. In other words, the intellectual soul, we all have intellect, and the more we develop it, the more it can help us answer that voice in our head, which is the animal soul or the evil inclination. And so the intellectual soul, like with logic, well, if you're good to others, they will be good to you. And if you're not good to others, it's going to come back to you. That's what's called karma. But in Jewish thought, it's called mida keneged mida, a measure for a measure. But the divine soul has a better answer. By being good, you emulate God and you become one with him. So in other words, the intellectual soul was trying to figure out why it's worth to be good, and has a good answer for the intellectual soul. For the animal soul. But here he says the divine soul has a better answer, and that is, by being good, you emulate God and you become one with him. So that's the divine soul speaking. You be good because God is good. And so if I'm like God, that's how I become one with God. The good of the intellectual soul is conditional. The good of the divine soul is unconditional. God is referred to as being good in essence. He is absolute, unconditional good. But now listen to what he says now, because this is something that we all deal with. So if God in essence is good and it's absolute, then why do bad things happen to good people? So he says like this, but God's goodness is not always revealed in this world of deceit. So in other words, we all know there's a lot of evil in the world. But that's because of the nature of this world, the nature of our consciousness, the nature of our choices. And so a lot of the time, we can't see the good behind stressful situations. And that's natural. Again, we're human beings, and it takes a very high level of consciousness to be able to see the good behind a world of deceit. Rabbi Ginsburgh continues, the power by which the soul reveals essential goodness to itself and to others is faith. So now he's saying something very important. In fact, that's the next section that we're going to get to, probably only next week. So in other words, how do you come to realize the goodness of God behind challenging situations? He says that is through faith. Through the faith that ultimately God's goodness is there and is real and will be revealed. So now he brings a little bit of Kabbalah. He says in Hebrew, the gematria of faith, the word for faith in Hebrew is emunah, which equals 102. So this word, emunah, faith, equals 6 times the word for good, tov. In other words, 6 times 17, tov is 17. 6 times 17 is 102. 6 times goodness is only revealed by faith. Since the word for good has 3 letters, it has 6 different permutations. This means that all 6 permutations of good together equal faith. So he's explaining what's the secret of 6 times 17. Because the word tov has 3 letters. And 3 letters can be permuted in 6 different ways. So every permutation of the 3 letters of tov all together equal faith. But it means that it's only through faith that we can come to see the good behind what initially appeared to be evil. So this is connected to, again, Lag BaOmer is next week. And Rabbi Akiva, so one of his rebbes was Nachum Ish Gamzu. Ish Gamzu means the man that also this is good. Why was he called that? Because that was his attitude about life. Gam zu l'tova. This is also for the good. And this was Rabbi Akiva's Rebbe. And the whole story is, without going into it, that Nachum Ish Gamzu suffered tremendously in this world. Tremendously. And yet, his attitude about everything was Gam zu l'tova. Amazing. Okay, so that's the end of this piece. Okay, now here's an important tweet. It says like this: the Bible speaks of 2 rods, a pleasant rod and a harmful rod. The rod is a symbol of discipline. In other words, in Hebrew, the idea of a rod is like a staff, but it's a staff of, in one context, of discipline. So he says like this: discipline can either be pleasant or harmful, depending on how you use it. This is a tremendous challenge for many, many people, is discipline. Here we're talking more on a spiritual, emotional, psychological, intellectual. We're not talking about like parents and children disciplining their children, or teachers disciplining their students. That's also a reality. Here we're talking more about how we live our life. Do we have a sense of discipline to accomplish what we want to? or do we just one second. Or do we just kind of flit from one thing to the other because we're not disciplined enough to follow through? So here he just says very simply that discipline can be either pleasant or harmful, depending on how you use it. So this is true of parents and children also. There can be a kind of discipline that makes everything worse. And there's a type of discipline that children desperately need and students desperately need. Okay. So here's another fairly short one. And that is that the gematria, the numerical value of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, equals a combination of two words together: regret, charata, and happiness, simcha. So in other words, the evil inclination equals regret and joy. So what is Rav Ginsburgh trying to show us here? So listen what he says, and this is based on a Talmudic discussion. God both regrets having created the evil inclination and is happy about it at the same time. It says in the Gemara that God, in a certain way, regrets that he made the evil inclination. So, of course, we'll ask the question, so why did he? If he regrets it. So, but on the other hand, he's happy that he did it. Why is he happy? Because God foresaw that the tzaddikim will transform it into good. Now listen what he says. For us, the evil inclination is both a source of regret if we succumb to it, and a source of happiness if we conquer it and transform it into good. So this is we'll call it the standard Jewish understanding of why there is evil in the world. Why couldn't God just create goodness? And so the answer is, and it's a standard answer, but it's rings of truth, and it's very, very important, is that the greatest goodness in God's eyes that he could give human beings is the ability to choose like God has the ability to choose. And if everything is good, then in a certain way, there was no reason for God to create we'll all be like marionettes. Everything is good. Everyone follows God's word. And then, well, why did God have to go through all of this trouble? What kind of goodness is God imparting to people who really don't have any free will? They're just doing God's will. It's like an angel. And so the answer is by giving us choice between good and evil. This is the whole secret of the Garden of Eden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay, we're not going to go into depths about that, but it goes back to that. And so in a certain way, God regrets making the evil inclination because he knows how much trouble it causes everyone, how challenged we are by it. And he feels in a certain way bad about it. On the other hand, he feels good about it because the greatest thing he could give us to become a Tselem Elokim, to be in the image of God, means that we can choose to be good like God. our own choice. And that's why in the Zohar, they call when someone is given like free gifts all the time, doesn't have to work for it. So it's called the bread of Shem. In other words, a person is just handed everything on a golden platter, and it might look good on the outside, but what the Zohar was trying to say is, but that's not the purpose of creation. That's not the purpose of why God created us. And he ends by saying, for us also, remember, the evil inclination, Yetzer Hara, equals the word for regret and joy. So he says, but that applies not just to God, it applies to us. When we allow our evil inclination to rule over us, eventually, at least, hopefully, we will come to regret it. But if we're able to conquer it, and not only conquer it, but to transform it into good. This is a secret, we've discussed this many times, that the gematria of the snake in the Garden of Eden, the Nachash, is the same as Mashiach, 358. So people, how can that be? They're diametrically opposed. One is the epitome of good, one's the epitome of evil. But we're told that in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil shared the same root system. Like, I'm just thinking of this because we spent time in the Rocky Mountains, aspen trees. If you've ever seen a stand of aspen trees, hundreds of aspen trees, they are all connected to the same root system. They don't have individual roots. They're all connected. And so the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, in the ultimate source, they are sharing the same energy, and it's the energy of desire and passion. And that's why when desire and passion is ruled by our animal soul, then we lean towards the evil inclination. It draws us in. But when we take passion and desire and we apply it to good things, that's the best of the best. So that's what Rabbi Ginsburgh is saying here. Not only if we conquer it, but we transform it into good. And this is the ultimate good that God wants for us, is that we do it through our own free will. Okay. Okay, we actually do have time for the new section of faith. So we'll start the new section of faith, and we will continue next week. We have a whole book to get through. Okay, so let's see the first one. Okay, we're going to start with this one. It says in the Torah, "You shall know today and bring it into your heart that Havaya, God is God, in the heavens above and on earth below. There is no other." So in Hebrew, V'yadata Hayom v'heshevota el levavecha. We say this every day in our prayers. Ki Hashem hu ha'elokim v'shemayim mima'al v'al ha'oretz mitachat ein od. I'm going to do it in English again. You shall know today and bring it into your heart that God is God, and the heavens above and the earth below. There is no other. So Rav Ginsburgh says like this. This verse has 61 letters. The numerical value of two words that are also in a certain way diametrically opposed, or they appear to be diametrically opposed, but ultimately they are complementary. And those two words is ani, I, ego, and ayin, which means nothingness, humbleness, self-effacement, selflessness. Those two words also have 61, equals 61, the same amount of letters in this verse that we're discussing. The verse's second word, it says, V'yadata Hayom, you shall know today. That word also equals 61. As does the word before the last, Ein Od, that's one of the words, Ein and Ani, also is 61. For those who know Rav Ginsburgh's teachings, he takes virtually every verse in the Torah and will analyze it in a mathematical, structured way, and then show what that's revealing on a spiritual level, psychological level, emotional, intellectual. Okay, now he says, the phrase opening the verse, you shall know today, can be read in three ways, meaning it can be understood in three ways. When it says, you shall know today. So what does that mean, actually? So he says, the first one is, you, not someone else, shall know today. Meaning it's a direct challenge. It's not like we're observing this. You shall know today that God is the only one. And we're reading it in the Torah, but he's saying, you, not someone else, meaning you have to know. It's a challenge to you that you have to know this. The second way of understanding it is, you shall know as clearly as day. Now, these are all, he's not quoting here, but these are different commentaries that he's drawing on. So the second one is, you shall know as clearly as day. You shall know today. You shall know as clear as the day is bright. And the third one is, you shall know today, not tomorrow. In other words, this is a direct challenge to us today. Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. He continues. It ends saying, there is no other. Doesn't only mean that there is no other God but God. It also says that there is nothing else but God. God is everything. Meaning, okay, this could be an hour class, what that means. But the idea is, nothing exists without God animating it, without there being a spark of life force from God. So you just take that one step further, and that everything is a manifestation of God's creative will. Alternatively, you shall know there is no other means there is nothing else to know but that Hashem is God. There's nothing else to know in this world other than it's all coming from God. So here we see a verse that is included, we say it actually 3 times a day, showing like kind of like the inside story of this verse. Now, when you read it, it sounds very simple, but he's bringing beautiful perspectives. So I'm just going to review quickly. You and not someone else should know that God is God. You shall know as clearly as day. And you shall know today, not tomorrow. So this is really a good idea to keep in our hearts, because that's what it says. You shall know today, and you shall put it in your heart. Not just in your mind, but in your heart. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Okay, I think we have time for one more here. This is called above the words. God created the world with speech. And then he quotes, God said, let there be light, and there was light. We know that there were 10 expressions. 9 of them say, and God said. And the 10th one is the first verse of the Torah, where it's implied that God said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So he says, communication creates. Learn to communicate. In other words, God creates through not just speech, through communication. In other words, an artist, let's say, paints a picture or sculpts something or makes pottery, whatever the art is, they're not actually speaking, but the art is the communication. That's their communication. So it's not just speech, but speech was the channel through which God creates. And so therefore, Rav Ginsburgh is saying, learn to understand that communication creates. It could create a very bad vibes between people, and it can create healing and love and transformation. Words can destroy worlds and create worlds. Rav Ginsburgh continues, words are like vessels. Usually a vessel's opening is on top. And then in parentheses, he says, in Hebrew, we call an opening a mouth, the organ of speech. To get to the vessel's contents, you have to reach in from above. So just imagine you have a jar, you have a bowl, whatever it is, and you want the contents, so you have to, as it were, come from above to get out what's in the vessel. Likewise, to understand the meaning embedded in words, you have to be above them, to sense their meaning even before reading them. So this sounds like just a very simple thing he's saying, but he's saying something really deep here, as he's going to explain. In other words, the Torah is words. And he's saying we have to be above the words. We have to understand the words are a vessel containing the content of what the words are trying to express. And so to get to the content, we have to be above them. In other words, it's just simply realizing that every word in the Torah, every verse, every mitzvah, every story holds infinite meaning. That's what's called being above the words. If you don't realize that, then you just read the words and it's totally superficial. He continues, when I see someone sweating at his job with a smile on his face, I think that he is by nature a hard worker, that he loves working. So he's just bringing an example now of a person who sees someone working and they seem very happy. Must mean that they really love working. But perhaps his ulterior motive for working so hard is to be able to afford a vacation, to take a week off from work. And that's why he's smiling. So in other words, if you look at a situation from just a very superficial, someone's working and they're smiling. Therefore, 1 + 1 = 2. That must mean that they love working, and that's why they're smiling. But Rav Ginsburgh said it could be completely the opposite. They don't like working at all, but they know that next week they're going on vacation that is going to be paid from the work that they're doing now. And so the smile on their face is for the vacation and not the work. See, it's just an example of how, if you look at something superficially, you might not get the right meaning. Then he says like this, the same goes for written or spoken words. If you're not on top of them, if you take them at face value, and you might have no clue what's behind them. That's why God created the world with words, so that while you're in the world, in the words, you'll never know why. Only when you rise above the world, meaning above the words, can you resonate with the vibes of God's inner desire and understand his real reasons. So, as I said before, this is actually quite profound what he's saying about how we should approach not just learning Torah, how we should approach reality is just always be tuned in to the fact that beware of taking everything at face value. You have to be above. You have to have a certain consciousness where you can see between the lines, see between the reality that is being spoken about. Okay, I think that is a good place to stop for tonight. Just to review, we finished the section on divine providence and free will. And there we saw that despite the fact we're finite, we have the ability to touch eternity and infinity and turn it into will, ratzon, in order to try to accomplish what we feel that we're in this world to do. And then we went to the idea of faith and how we need a lot of faith to see the goodness in the world sometimes. But we have to believe, we have to have the faith in the ultimate goodness of not only God, but the world itself. And then we went to good and evil. Actually, good and evil was before faith. And the challenge of dealing with good and evil. But Rav Ginsburgh said in a number of different ways, the way we approach it is ultimately up to us. It's either going to be bitter or sweet. It's going to be a fall or a rise. And so we'll end with a blessing. May we all be blessed that if we have to fall or we do fall, that we never lose touch with the idea that there'll be a rise that will come from it. Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. 7 times the tzaddik falls and rises. And I bless everyone that Shabbat, remember the numerical value of Sheva Yipol Tzaddik, 7 times tzaddik falls equals Shabbat, that we allow Shabbat to heal us, to comfort us, and whatever fall we had during the week, we should be able to rise to higher and higher heights.